Hi folks, HR Funk here, with a brace of revolvers that would have been fashionable in the latter half of the 19th century. These are two Remington revolvers. Unfortunately, they are reproductions, they're not originals, and these are from the Cimarron Firearms Company, which were manufactured by Uberti in Italy. And what I have is a cartridge conversion of a revolver that in real life would have started out as a Remington New Model Army intended for cap and ball, either loose powder, cap and ball, or paper cartridges at best, and it has been converted to use what would have been, at the period, new metallic cartridges. And I also have Remington's later dedicated metallic cartridge revolver, the model 1875, and we're going to take a close-up look at both of these. And before this video ends, I'll get them out to the range and we'll see how they still shoot in 2021. And I'll start our close-up look with the revolver that in actuality would have started life as a New Model Army, manufactured from about 1860 till 1865 or so. And this revolver, as I mentioned in the intro, would have started out intending to be used with either loose powder and a cap and ball or paper cartridges. And what we see that Uberti/Cimarron has done is reproduce a similar configuration to that which gunsmiths would have used during the latter half of the 19th century. To that end, this revolver now, if I can get it open, has a cylinder with chambers bored all the way through, as opposed to how it would have come from the factory, where this end of the cylinder would have simply had a place to put the percussion caps on the nipples, and the only opening would have been in the front of the cylinder. This revolver still has the black powder / cap style hammer, and if you look very closely at the bottom, you see a projection that is intended to strike a firing pin that's been installed inside the frame. You can just see it there, in order to properly fire center fire ammunition. Now, at the very outset, I suspect these revolvers would have been chambered for rimfire ammunition, which was period correct, and that would have probably functioned okay with the standard hammer. But in order to fire center fire cartridges, it does need to move the firing pin lower in the frame in order to strike the primer. We can see that the loading lever on this revolver is retained, and it does still serve a purpose. It's not just there because that's where it started. There's a notch in the loading lever, and if you look closely, you can see that that notch secures the ejector and prevents the ejector from moving when the revolver is fired and recoils. In order to eject spent cartridge cases, the revolver has to be on half cock with the loading gate open. And now the loading lever is opened, and that allows the ejector to perform its function and eject fired cartridges. When the cartridges are all ejected, the loading lever is resecured, which again locks the ejector in place, and the revolver can be loaded. And then it's ready for use. So a simple but rather ingenious means of converting a cap and ball New Model Army revolver to use metallic cartridges. And again, this would have been accurate circa 1870, give or take, when a lot of people may have owned revolvers just like this that started out as cap and ball, and rather than buy a brand new revolver, they simply had their old revolver converted to be able to use the then new metallic cartridges. By 1875, Remington had caught on to the idea that the metallic cartridges were not just a passing fad, and at that time they came out with their own revolver intended from the outset to fire metallic cartridges. The 1875 revolver bears a resemblance to the older Army revolver that we just looked at. We can see there is still this web underneath the barrel that is reminiscent of the loading lever, but it really doesn't serve any purpose other than to provide a housing for a very long cylinder pin that holds the cylinder in place. This portion of the revolver we see was very much influenced by the Colt single action Army. It's very reminiscent of that design, although the grip and the grip frame still resembles the older new model Army revolver. This revolver, like the new model Army and the cartridge conversion we just looked at, has a 6-shot capacity. The action is just like the older revolver. There is a half cock notch which frees the cylinder for loading and unloading. Full cock notch, which is used in order to fire the revolver. The sights are very simple. This one has a front sight that again bears a strong resemblance to the Colt single action Army. And when I look at this revolver, it really looks to me like an 1860 Army, but a Remington new model Army mated with a Colt single action Army, and this was the child that was produced. These revolvers were never as popular as the Colt revolvers, but this one is still a very nice example. I love the color case hardened frame on this revolver. It also disassembles for cleaning very easily. Once again, you place the cylinder on half cock. This pin, or excuse me, this screw is spring loaded. You have to push that and hold it while you pull forward on the cylinder pin, and the cylinder comes out this side of the frame. And I would take it out and show you exactly how that's done, but when I did that prior to the video, I had a heck of a time getting it back in because this revolver is virtually brand new and it's very tight, and it just took me a lot of wiggling and jiggling to get that thing back in there, and I don't want to try to do it on camera. Plus, if I show any kind of disassembly or reassembly, YouTube will probably demonetize this video. Again, very handsome revolver. I'm looking forward to shooting both of these. They both have an 8-inch barrel. As I mentioned, they're both 6-shot capacity, and they are both chambered for the .45 Colt cartridge. I think these are both very handsome revolvers. They both have a 6-shot capacity. The cartridge conversion has an 8-inch barrel, and the 1875, by the way, this one is called the Outlaw in Cimarron's parlance, has a 7.5-inch barrel. And I am really looking forward to getting these out to the range and seeing how they perform. And it appears I've arrived here on the range with my 2 Cimarron reproduction Remington revolvers just in time for the snow to really start to pick up, so this should be interesting. In just a couple of minutes I'm going to start to do some shooting with both of these revolvers. I think I'll start out with the cartridge conversion first. We'll do a little bit of slow fire accuracy shooting just to see what kind of accuracy it's capable of. Then I'll switch over to the 1875 and give it a try. So here we go. So I said that was going to be a slow fire accuracy drill. I ended up firing those a little faster than I intended to. Still, nice group. That was a distance of 30 feet. Now I'm going to switch over to the 1875 and see how it does. And I have a cartridge hanging up with the 1875. Let me see if I can get this cleared, and I'll try that again. Okay, so I had kind of a strange malfunction with the 1875, and I finally figured out what happened. When I fired the first shot, the cylinder pin actually moved forward. It got past the screw, or the spring-loaded screw that's supposed to be holding it, and when that moved forward, the revolver would not properly cock and fire, which is a good safety precaution as far as that goes. I've now got that cleared, and I'm going to load this back up and try it again. Now, it's possible when I disassembled this earlier, I talked about having some problems getting the cylinder back in. Maybe I didn't have that cylinder pin all the way forward to have it locked, but I'll try to fire this again in this accuracy drill, and we'll see how it does. And the accuracy of the 1875 is looking very comparable with that of the cartridge conversion. The shot holes are pretty much one right on top of the other. I am pulling them all off to the left just slightly, and I'm not sure if that's the revolvers or if it's just me. I did shoot those last couple of drills rather quickly. So what I'm going to do is back off to a distance of 50 feet. I really am going to slow down this time, and we'll see what type of accuracy we can get from these two revolvers from that distance. And first up, once again, from this distance of 50 feet, will be the New Model Army cartridge conversion. And I think the cartridge conversion revolver is hitting just slightly off to the left. This third and final shot that I fired from back at 50 feet didn't feel as good as the first two. The first two felt like very good shots, and we're seeing them just drift over to the left a little bit. I'll shift gears and move over to the 1875 and see if it's doing the same thing. And no, I don't think that's me. I think both revolvers are hitting just slightly off to the left. And it's interesting that they're both demonstrating the exact same point of impact. I had two shots out of both of those last three string shots, or three shot strings rather, that were a little off from the group, but 4 out of those 6 from two different revolvers are clustered right there in about a 1-inch group. And again, I don't think that's me. I think both revolvers are hitting just slightly off to the left, but it's nothing that a little bit of Kentucky windage won't correct as I shoot my way through the rest of this video. Well folks, it's a good thing I got that windage situation figured out when I did, because as you can see, some water bottle Desperados just showed up, and I'm going to try our cartridge conversion Remington revolver first and see if I can prove to them they should have stayed wherever they were to begin with. So, being the slow learners that they are, 2 more water bottle Desperados just showed up, and fortunately I have the 1875 all loaded and ready to go. Let's see if I can ruin their day. And that's 4 Desperados up and 4 Desperados down for our Cimarron Remington Revolvers. Moment of truth, folks. Are our 2 Cimarron-produced Remington reproduction revolvers tack drivers? Well, I have 2 of them I'm going to have to answer that question with, and the first one up, once again, is going to be the New Model Army cartridge conversion. Not quite enough Kentucky windage on that first shot, so it hit off to the left, which has been the tendency of both of these revolvers. Still not enough. We have one more shot to see if our cartridge conversion is a tack driver. And no, I have a nice group, but unfortunately our cartridge conversion is not going to be a tack driver, at least not with me at the wheel today. Let's switch gears and see how the 1875 revolver does. Well, you can't get much closer than that. I got 2 more tries. Make that 1 more try. And I knew that last one was a bad shot when the trigger broke. Folks, I think on a better day, when I wasn't out here shivering and my hands are freezing, probably both of these revolvers would have been tack drivers, but I just can't pull it off in these conditions. Folks, I don't know if you could tell or not, but it was kind of a rough day out on the range today. The temperatures here are in the mid-20s, and with the wind chill, it's down into the teens, and I was having all the problems out there that I always have when I get into those kind of temperatures, with my cameras going down and one thing and another not working right. So I decided to come back into the shop and finish up this video. I wanted to talk a little bit about my impressions of these revolvers after shooting them, and overall my impression of both revolvers is very favorable. But just as I was doing out on the range, I'm going to start out talking about the cartridge conversion revolver, and I'll finish up with the 1875. One quick thing I wanted to mention before I start to talk about the revolvers themselves is the ammunition I was using out on the range today. This is Fiocchi 250 grain lead round nose flat point ammunition, and I was impressed by this stuff. I think this is the first time I've shot it, and I thought the accuracy was good. It has some oomph, but also the recoil impulse was pretty mild. I really enjoyed shooting this in these 2 revolvers, and I think if you're looking for something that is just going to be fun to shoot and you're not looking for the absolute most powerful ammunition you can get in the 45 Colt cartridge, this is good stuff. Take a look at this if you can find it right now, and I think you'll be happy with it. So our new Model Army cartridge conversion. First off, this thing was very reliable. I had no issues with it whatsoever in terms of shooting. I thought the accuracy was impressive. We did see both revolvers have a tendency to shoot to the left slightly, but overall, not bad. And this revolver, the one thing I noticed with it didn't have anything to do with shooting it, but it did have to do with unloading it, or specifically removing the fired cartridge cases from the revolver. You have to do a little bit of a juggling act with the 1858, because as I mentioned, once you put the revolver on half cock and lower what actually still is the loading lever, and start to use the ejector to remove those fired cases, what happens is you will move the case, then you have to raise the ejector back up, and when you go to turn the cylinder, the ramrod portion of the loading latch falls into the bottom chamber and locks up the cylinder. So you have to hold that up while you are trying to use the ejector, and the ejector doesn't have a spring to return it back to its forward position. So once you remove the fired cartridge, you have to hold that up and also hold up on the loading lever while at the same time indexing the cylinder to the next chamber and then trying to do it all over again, which is doable, and I'm sure with practice it gets easier and easier. But it was something that just slowed down my progress out there, which I was probably more sensitive to today because it is so cold. But other than that, small criticism, this revolver shot very well. I think it looks great. It was fun. And I think if you're looking for something a little different from the mid-19th century in terms of reproduction firearms, these are really interesting firearms As I said, very fun to shoot and accurate. Also, one other thing, both of these revolvers had very good single action triggers. And that was one of the reasons I shot some of those drills as fast as I did, because I lined up the sights and pressed the trigger, the hammer fell, and the bullet went where I was pointing the revolver. So I was very impressed with the triggers. And like I said out at the range, I think on a better day in warmer weather, both of these would have probably been tack drivers. I would have had to use a little bit more Kentucky windage than I did just to get that zeroed in on the tack. But in terms of just pure mechanical accuracy, I think this revolver and the 1875 were very good. And on we go to the 1875. This revolver, in terms of function, felt very much like I was shooting a Colt single action revolver. In terms of loading, unloading, and just the firing process, it all felt very familiar. This one, as opposed to the cartridge conversion, does have a spring-loaded ejector, so when you release it, it moves back to its forward position. You can index the cylinder easily and unload the chambers of the revolver. Of course, when it comes to loading, you simply drop each cartridge in with the revolver on half cock so that you can physically index the chambers, and the revolver is loaded and ready to go. Also, as I said out at the range, I think that odd malfunction that I had when the cylinder pin moved forward and prevented the revolver from properly functioning was my fault. I think I just did not get that pin all the way pressed back to the position where it was supposed to lock in with the spring-loaded screw right here. And it only happened on the very first shot, which reinforces that idea that it was my fault. And since it wasn't properly locked into place, when the revolver recoiled on that first shot, the pin moved forward. Once I got it back into place and locked in, for the rest of the shooting that I did today, I never had an issue. So I don't think that's a revolver problem. I think that was an HR Funk problem. Just like the cartridge conversion revolver, this was a lot of fun. It demonstrated really good accuracy. Did have that slight tendency to hit off to the left. And I don't think that was me. When I moved back to 50 feet and I really took my time and squeezed off those shots and I was still hitting to the left, I think that was the revolvers. And it could have been something to do with the revolvers themselves and maybe that Fiocchi ammunition, which, while it demonstrated very good accuracy, did have that slight impact off to the left. But other than that, as I mentioned earlier in the video, this is an extremely good looking revolver, and I'm trying to turn it so you can see that color case hardened frame. The bluing on both of these revolvers is very nice. The sights are period correct, but they are functional. And again, it is an extremely fun revolver to shoot. So there you have it, folks. That's my review of the Remington / Cimarron / Uberti models of revolvers from the 1870s. By the way, there's a lot of companies involved in finally bringing these two revolvers to my hands. These revolvers were loaned to me by a viewer, so they're not mine. They will be going back. At least I think they're going to be going back, unless I happen to, I don't know, lose one. But again, very, very fun revolvers. I enjoyed this a lot. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you order anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. See you next time, folks. And until then, hopefully on a warmer day, good shooting. Bye-bye.